Africa. Ooh, a dark continent. Ooh. Hey, I'm here to let you know that it's not so bad out there. I'm telling you that. So, of course, in between the America in general and in between the whole continent of Africa, you're gonna find a lot of differences. But hey, it's not so bad. And I'm here to let you know on some of the differences you might see when you're traveling to Africa. Let's go. And for my first point in this video, let's start with the pace of life. In the US in general, time is strictly observed, with punctuality being a cultural norm and often equated with professionalism. While in Africa, life tends to be more relaxed and slower paced, especially in rural areas. The concept of African time means things often don't start exactly on schedule. And from experience and perspective, guys, I am letting you know, never be super precise with an African person, especially about time, because they will never be there on time. I'm not trying to say some shit right here, but I'm just letting you know that from experience, whenever you say to somebody like, yeah, let's meet up around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, whatever, your appointment might always be a little bit late, you know? From that perspective, don't try and be rude to people if they're always kind of late. But hey, just understand that's the culture. People will get there when they get there. And if they're a little bit late, so be it. But now, moving on to number 2, hospitality and community. In the US, it is a more individualistic culture with less frequent interaction with neighbors or strangers unless previously arranged. And that is a very strong point. For example, in here, you can't tell that you know your neighbor 100% or you know all of your neighbors, and there's like a strong sense of community. Like there's, yes, a strong sense of I just know this guy, or I just know this girl, or I just know these neighbors right there. Like people are just acquaintances to each other, but to the point where they are super friends and super into their community and all of that, it becomes rare nowadays in the US. That's what I feel like. While in Africa is a strong emphasis on community, extended families, and hospitality. Guests are often treated like family and are generously offered food or gifts sometimes. Yeah, sometimes you might even show up to one of those countries in Africa and you will get some of the greatest hospitality you would ever gotten in your whole life. You would think that you're actually like somebody like a king or something in their country, but actually no, it's just a form of respect and hospitality and a real sense of community, you know? Because at the end of the day, we're all in the same boat. And now moving on to number 3, public infrastructures. In Africa, infrastructures varies greatly by country. In some areas, roads, water supply, and electricity can be unreliable or limited. Yeah, in some of the countries in Africa, roads are pretty much nasty, disgusting, and destroyed basically, or sometimes not even existing. So to go from a point A to point B, sometimes you would not even use a road, you would just go on the dirt and stuff like that, or just in nature basically. While in the US, generally in here, we got well-developed and consistent infrastructures in most regions, including clear water, roads, and public transport. At least in the US, you have basically access to pretty much anything you want. And if you are looking to go to a very specific or special area, maybe then in that case the roads are not gonna be 100%. But in most of the cases, basically in here, roads, water, everything is affordable and everything is possible basically. Moving on to number 4, street markets versus supermarkets. In Africa, they have many local shops in open-air markets for fresh produce, clothes, and goods, often bartering or negotiating prices. Basically, that whole system exists here and there in basically every city of every country in Africa. You will find supermarkets in basically every city of every country in Africa you will go to. And in all of those places, you can always go, really check the price, and sometimes even bargain and maybe get a better price or something like that. So there's always a possibility of even just talking. While in the US, most people shop in large chain supermarkets with fixed price and less bargaining. And in here, I'm sorry to say, but as soon as you want to go shopping somewhere, doing some grocery shopping, you know, you go to a Walmart, for example, a Publix, you go to basically a big supermarket store, basically. And you go there and basically they have prices that are fixed. You just get what you want, you see if you can pay it, and you can go for it, you know? So from that perspective, it is less of a hassle to actually get the products you want, because you are pretty sure of always finding the right products that you want in the supermarkets and stuff like that. But in the street markets, it's not gonna be the same, even though it is gonna be even fresher in a way. And if you guys think I'm completely wrong on this one, let me know down in the comments below. And don't forget, like this video and subscribe to your boy's channel. And don't forget the other 2 channels. And now moving on to number 5, wildlife and nature. In Africa, wildlife like zebras, elephants, and lions can be seen in national parks or even near populated areas in some countries. While in the US, wildlife is mostly domesticated or limited to forest zones. Zoos are the main place to see exotic animals. And that's basically goddamn right. Over there, you might literally encounter some of those really exotic animals just in the wild by going to a safari or something like that, and you will see some of the craziest animals on the earth. And in here, the only thing you can do basically is go to a zoo, and then that's where you can see those exotic animals and stuff like that. In here, you can also see some crazy animals. For example, in Florida, you can also see some gators out there. I can basically go out there right now and see a gator left and right. Or like sometimes if you're living next to a big forest or whatever, you gotta be careful from like cougars or like even bears nowadays. So just to say, we've also got our fair share of wildlife that's running crazy in here too. So we might don't have zebras, but we have cougars. Now moving on to number 6, forms of transportation. In the US, there is a wide use of personal cars, ride-sharing apps, and organized public transit in cities. While in Africa, public transport includes minibuses, tuk-tuks, or mini bike taxis. Roads may be unpaved in some areas even. And so you see how it is basically super different for somebody to actually go from point A to a point B in the US versus in Africa. In Africa, it's gonna be a hustle for you to do that. But in here, it's actually super easy to just go on your app, go like, okay, let me get an Uber, boom, I can go somewhere right now, you know, and you just can wait like 20 minutes or something like that. Like, what do you think of how easy we have it in here? Thank God. Because in other countries, I am telling you, they still have, for example, tuk-tuks and all of that. Like, it's fun and cool, but you cannot rely on that stuff kind of like 100%. And if I'm wrong about this one, let me know down in the comments below, guys. Now, moving on to number 7, electricity and power outages. In Africa, in many countries, especially in rural areas, power outages are common. Some homes rely on generators or even solar, while in the US, power is generally stable with rare outages, except during storms or even emergencies. So that's where you see that over there, they don't have per se that much resources to actually work with to actually make it possible for everybody to have electricity. Like over there, sometimes if you're not like in the city and basically you are in the rural areas and all of that, of course, sometimes you will have to, you know, make some construction and really put some money into it so that you can bring electricity all the way to rural areas and stuff like that. But over here, there's not that problem. But over here, as soon as there is like a storm or something, which we are very familiar with in Florida, I am telling you, we lose power once a week. And then moving on to number 8, currency and cash use. In the US, credit and debit cards are widely used and cash is becoming less common. Basically, no one has cash on themselves almost. Like everybody's just using their cards, everybody's using tap, everybody's using their phones and stuff like that. No one actually uses real dollar bills and stuff like that. While in Africa, many transactions are still cash-based. Mobile money is also very popular in countries like Kenya or Ghana. And basically, cash-based transactions are what's mostly used over there. So in some places, you will find that they are making it easier for people to actually pay in, for example, with crypto money and stuff like that by just tapping their phones and stuff like that, or like sometimes even by like texting phone messages and using the service or whatever. They have a whole system on that. But money in most of Africa is real. And now, moving on to number 9. And this one is gonna get me in trouble because we're talking about food and diets. In Africa, diets often consist of local staples like maize, rice, beans, plantains, or cassava, with spices and regional flavors. While in the US, a mix of processed and fast food is widely available with an emphasis on convenience and variety. So with all the variety and the conveniences and the easy way of getting any kind of food you want, for me, I just noticed something. I just noticed that mostly people in the US are a little bit bigger than people in Africa. And I'm not talking about, oh, it's not because they are lacking resources and that's why they are always slim or something like that. But no, you gotta look at it the other way. Why do we in here, with all the resources in the world and with all the information in the world, have people, a little bit bigger than usual, So that's why I'm saying, like, I believe that the best food and diet is probably African and not American. But at least in my point number 10, now we're gonna talk about security and visible guards. In Africa, in many urban areas, you may see guards at malls, banks and hotels, and sometimes gated homes with walls and barbed wire. While in the US, security is very present, but more subtle in everyday life. Police and surveillance systems are common but less visible in residential areas. Yeah, and at least for your security, you feel a lot more secure going around here than in over there. At least over there in Africa, telling you, you gotta be careful of what you are showing because you don't know how everybody is actually looking at you and going like, oh yeah, he's actually got a watch or a pair of sneakers or something that's worth a lot of money. Hey, we can snatch that up real quick, So you guys be very careful also when you go to Africa because you never know what to expect and you also gotta be careful, Not saying that here you also gotta not be careful. You never know as well, like if you go to specific areas of the country, you gotta be careful of some people. But other than that, mostly the general vibe is very safe in a way. And now for my bonus 2 points that I wanted to include in this video, even though it's called the 10 differences in between Africa and America, for example, but I wanted to include these 2 as a bonus. First thing, the weather. The weather is not the same. Over there, it is very hot all the time. And when it gets cold or when it starts to rain and all of that, there's not that much damage and all of that. But it feels like in here, every time something happens, for example, hurricanes in Florida, for example, earthquakes in California and fires in California as well. Or when you get tornadoes in the middle of the country and stuff like that. Like it costs a lot to fix a lot of the shit that gets destroyed easily actually in here. The second thing I wanted to talk about is the cost of living. The cost of living actually in Africa is not that much. Like you don't have to make that much money to actually live a normal, happy life in a way. But it feels like in here, the cost of living year by year is getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. For example, they say that just the cost of living in 2025, for example, in Florida is pretty much $100,000 for a couple and all of that. So that tells you that the cost of living is actually pretty high because everything else is pretty costly. And when you think of your bills, when you think of car payments, when you think of your food, when you think of entertainment and everything, I am telling you the cost of living in the US is not cheap. And on my conclusion, guys, I just wanted to say that yes, there are a lot of differences, but also a lot of similarities in between Africa and America. But at the end of the day, we are all people striving to be better every day and striving to make a better life. And so it is through our differences that we can make ourselves even stronger. And that's why this video is here for, guys. And on that note, I will let you go for now. But don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and your boy's gonna see you in the next one. Peace.